So, hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's been some time off, but nevertheless, we are going back with cybersecurity, and today on number 4, egg versus chicken dilemma. Data classification, I can give you a hint, it will be for the labeling solutions, or information flow enforcement, DLP. So, when companies are considering going into data protection program, and trying to choose right software for it, or maybe in more general, right tool to it, the limelight always goes to either DLP or the labeling solutions. And in this particular webinar, or episode, I will try to tell you which one goes when and why. And that's why I also call it egg versus chicken dilemma. So which one goes first? As you presume, the answer is it depends. Why? Maybe let's start with foundation of data security or data protection. There are two main areas which I consider like a founding pillars for any data protection program. And those are visibility. So in the words of one great Muhammad Ali, you cannot hit what you cannot see. So you need to know what sensitive information you have and where it is, where it lies, within what assets, within what files. And then it would be good to have some kind of control over it, meaning software which will apply certain action when certain conditions are met. Probably you put it into certain policies. And for that, you need the right tool. Now, data labeling and data loss prevention, they work differently. And I will tell you why. For data classification is starting with a user. The basic assumption is that the user will be the one who knows what data does he create, what sensitive information is inside, and he will manually apply the label. So guess what? You're making your user your partner in crime. Poor choice of words. You're making your user your partner in data protection. And it's very good because, he classified, he should know. There are different labels you can apply. I will go to it in the next slide, but generally process goes like this. The human, the user, myself, I manually apply a label, internal, external, customer data, GDPR related, whatever is the labeling schema of the organization. And it depends on your internal policies. And then I apply it to a file. Executable, Word, PDF, whatever. Now, to go more into details, and believe me, I will not be going too much into details here. First of all, what do you need for the labeling solution is it needs to be compliant with your labeling schema written in your policies. Duh. So this is most common one. Public, internal, confidential, restricted use. Public, send it anywhere. Internal, only for our company. Confidential, only authorized individuals. Restricted use, God forbid, for someone unauthorized to get access to those files. And of course, it depends on user awareness, which of those labels they will apply. Like I said, this is the most basic example. It can also be, for example, public and there is like two-level classification. One is public, the second one is, for example, marketing or finance, so department related. It can be a regulatory compliance related, but then you wouldn't need it for public because there's probably some regulatory which says what can goes into public. So anywhere, then you would put it on the second label next to public. The second consideration for data classification, it's what files you can actually label because, there are limited list of file types. So what are you mostly working with? Do a list and consider it once choosing a data classification. Fun fact, some of the regulatory compliance directives in some countries, and I will not be mentioning by name because I only know one, they are explicitly saying you need data classification. So it might be good to do some legal reading before choosing the right tool to your data protection program to avoid fines. Now, my favorite, my beloved, data loss prevention. As I mentioned with data labeling, you start with a user applies the label, and then you have this reports in a central management server saying, oh, these labels were applied this number of times. This is the most used label. This user usually applies these labels. Data loss prevention comes from other side. So you centrally enforce some policies which user has to obey, or they will be logged, like their transaction with data will be logged, or the transaction will be blocked. Actually, you have the list of available action here on this particular slide. Data loss prevention is more of a control tool. Data labeling is more of a visibility tool. Why data loss prevention is control? Because you have the ability to put an action based on the internal sensitive information stored within the file. And here, my devil on my arm says, oh, but how the DLP knows what the sensitive information is within the file? Let me answer you right there. Those are called data classification engines, and they are this great pyramid on the right side of the slide. Basically, when we talk about the enterprise DLP, there are two main areas, in my humble opinion. First is those data classification engine, how precise the DLP can recognize if this is sensitive data or not. I mean, what is sensitive data, right? Like, of course, there is this generally known sensitive data, customer info, personal info. I call it described data. So described because there is a general known to everyone description that this is sensitive data, basically. But there is this other part, which is kind of unique per customer. And this can be your formulas. This can be your legal agreements. This is your invoices and your customer information, which are, pretty unique per company. So this is what I call it myself a classified data because it's classified by the company. And so you have this described, generally considered sensitive, classified, which is sensitive because this organization says so. And how the DLP is able to recognize sensitive data within a file, this is what makes DLP a trustworthy software for your data protection program. I mean, hopefully. We do a good job on SportsPoint, by the way. Now, this is one area, so ability to recognize. Second area, the channel coverage. I mean, I don't need an endpoint DLP if I will be sending everything to a cloud or email or any kind of, network repository. Or I don't need a proxy DLP if I will put everything to the USB drive directly from my laptop. So here is basically a very good idea. And we are saying on the how column, you basically see the possible channels. So it can be a print, it can be some kind of instant messaging, IM, it can be a web. I mean, here we access Dropbox via the browser, so it's a web, or it can be FTP file transfer. Yeah, I can add HTTP, HTTPS, or simply an email. Oh, the email is there on the green. And all the columns, they consist of how the policy in DLP, this centrally enforced policy, could be created. So let's say you take a user group. I will go with the green, right? So you take human resources, which by definition have access to personal data, right? They send it to a business partner, okay, with an email. So the admin says, okay, admin, it's automated. So encrypt. Use the encryption module and encrypt this email just in case, right? We want to be secured. But if the same human resources take this personal data and put it on Dropbox via browser, block the action. And how we know it's personal data? Because of the data classification engines on the right side of the slide. So one more time, labeling, it's user-centric, where a user is assumed to know what data he works with, what sensitive information he works with. He applies label. Data loss prevention, DLP, the IT security department / compliance / let's say DLP steering committee knows what data needs to be protected and how, and they centrally enforce those protection via mechanism in DLP, in data loss prevention software. So, egg and chicken dilemma? I don't think so. Actually, I think that they are working together. Here you have a kind of a way how they cooperate. Basically, if the user is classifying something as public and the DLP recognizes that there is some restricted information, then the DLP, via integration with data classification, can forcefully change the label to internal or to restricted. On the other hand, if DLP is constantly logging transactions where the label is public or is constantly changing some kind of labeling from more restricted to less restricted, so from internal to public, or the DLP is changing to more restricted from public to internal, then there might be some kind of business process problem worth to be discussed with your users or with the business risk owners. So they kind of comply, Basically, the DLP will make the data classification more accurate and vice versa. The data classification, so the users can give valuable input for DLP policies to make them more accurate. So one more time, are there friends or enemies? They are friends. In my opinion, they're like big up, they can work arm to arm. There is no hen and egg, chicken and egg dilemma, because those are two separate parts of one goal. Of a road to one goal, which is data security. And I think this great meme with some cool masculine motives here kind of shows where I'm going with it, right? With this, I hope I've given you enough of the understanding to at least ask the right questions once you be considering any of those tools in your data protection program. I warmly invite you to a next C Cybersecurity, which will not be in February 2023, as we are already in April. I'm sorry for the delay. I had work to do. State of email security. So how the tech looks like in 2023, because as you remember, email is still a #1 vector of cyber attacks, data leakages, corporate communications, you name it. It was a real pleasure, and drop me a message if you need something. See you.